fire up the recording and start getting things underway here. Thank you all for joining the first inaugural session of the Stakeholder Advisory Working Group for Maryland's Building Energy Performance Standards. My name is Sam Furio. I'm the Outreach Coordinator for MDE's Building Decarbonization Team. I will be moderating this session. Thank you for joining this inaugural session. And if you're here today, you most likely already signed up for the working group through our email list. But if you happen to receive the invite from someone else, please make sure that you sign up for our general email list and also our other offered working groups through this email feature I'm dropping in the chat right now. So today, as part of this working group, we'll be talking about informing the long-range implementation of the BEPS program. Before we dive in, I'd like to introduce some of our other team that's on the call. We have Dr. Zach Brazola, aka Dr. Decarb, Division Chief of the Building Decarbonization Division. Zach, if you want to say hey.
Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Zach. So today I'm going to kick us off with some background information, and then I'll hand it over to Zach to walk you through some of the specifics of this working group. So as you saw and can see by the big red light in the top corner of the screen, this session will be recorded and uploaded to the Maryland Department of the Environment BEPS YouTube playlist. So if you miss anything today, or if you want to catch up on other working groups we've run, you can tune into that playlist and stay up to date. We will share a link to the slides of this working group in the description of that video on YouTube after it is posted. This session will have an opportunity at the end for discussion. To partake in the discussion, I think we can be pretty informal here. It seems like a small group, so just if you have thoughts or anything, just come off mute and you know, share them. And also, since it's a small group, if it was larger, we'd ask everyone to kind of keep comments to a timely manner. But I think you know, just be cognizant of how long you're going. But this is a small group, so I think we'll have time for a little bit longer discussion from each person. Additionally, as part of this working group, we will be, you can also submit your feedback via a Google form, which we will be sending out a link for as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to talk current status of Maryland's Building Energy Performance Standards. We're going to talk about what is the purpose of this Stakeholder Advisory Working Group. We're going to talk long-range planning and scheduling additional sessions of this working group, and then that discussion and feedback portion that I just mentioned. So first things first, a little bit of background on the state's climate efforts and how this whole BEPS thing came to be. So back in 2022, the state passed the Climate Solutions Now Act, which set Maryland on a new path to reduce its climate pollution. And on that path, we set some of the most ambitious climate goals in the nation. Those goals are to reduce statewide greenhouse gas emissions by 60% by 2031 and achieve net zero emissions economy-wide by 2045. So just a small piece of this effort is Maryland's Building Energy Performance Standards. It is required to be implemented by the CSNA of 2022, but it does play a critical role in the emissions reductions that the state is aiming to achieve. So you can read the entire plan for achieving these climate goals online today. It's called Maryland's Climate Pollution Reduction Plan. But today we are talking BEPS in particular and long-range planning for this program. A little bit of a current status. I think everyone on the call is pretty well aware of BEPS, but just gonna tell you where we are now. So again, this program aims to reduce emissions from large buildings in the state to assist in meeting the state's climate goals, aims to reduce energy costs for Marylanders, and improve indoor and outdoor air quality for Marylanders. So the regulation was finalized at the end of 2024, and it is in effect for the state. These large buildings are those 35,000 square feet or larger, excluding any parking garage area, and we call them covered buildings. So we just completed our first year of benchmarking for the program, and the next benchmarking deadline is June 1st, 2026. So just about 6 months away. And the building owners will need to submit calendar year 2025 data to the department by that date. So in addition to this benchmarking requirement, covered buildings will need to start meeting phased emissions standards starting in 2030 or pay for excess emissions over the standards. That's currently the only performance standard that's in the regulation, but MDE also intends to adopt an energy efficiency standard in addition to that emissions portion in 2027. So with that in mind, what is the purpose of this working group? I said to inform long-range planning of BEPS, and that's very true. There's a lot to be done between now and 2030 when these performance standards begin. So the emission standard starts in 2030. If we adopt that EUI energy efficiency standard in 2027, it would also, begin in 2030. This working group, as a part of this, this next 5-year, period and also beyond, will inform programmatic changes and long-range implementation of the BEPS program, and also provide a consistent structured space for stakeholder feedback. So thrilled that you all are tuned in with us and looking forward to kicking off this work group. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Zach to talk about major topics that we're going to talk through.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. So a few of these, basically just want to lay out some of the high-level major topics that are on our minds, and then we can definitely get into other topics that you'd like to see. So the first is interim net direct emission standards, and basically reviewing that and the methodology for setting them. The final emission standard, as Sam said, is 0, so that there's a little less to talk about on that front. And then energy use intensity, or EUI, generally an energy efficiency target, interim and final standards, and alternative compliance payments for those. And we'll get into a little bit too why these different things in a couple of slides. The main reason actually for one of the main reasons to look at these two is certain requirements that MDE has as part of the House Bill 49 of 2025, which requires us to go do a bunch of study, analysis, recommendations, and also setting benchmarks based off of setting some of these standards based off benchmark buildings next year. And so we'll get space at the end for other topics you'd like to see. So just to get into a few of these things, standard setting, and the way we've got this set up, I'll go through a couple of slides here, and then we're just going to open it up and we can hop in on any of these things you want to talk about. So standard setting, the baseline benchmarking report submitted by June 1st, 2026. So calendar year 25 data submitted by June will establish the baseline metrics for covered buildings to inform BEPS standards and compliance into the future. And actually, some of the things I'm reading here actually come right out of our current technical support documentation for the regulation. This is kind of from the beginning. We always knew that we would take a look at the data we received in this first 2 years of benchmarking and use the third-party verified 2025 calendar year data to help set these and review what our standards were set on. And just for folks that maybe aren't aware, the kind of the interim standards published today were based on benchmarking data from about 3,000 buildings across the state. So a pretty substantial data set that we're already benchmarking. But as we get more and more buildings across the state benchmarking through the program, we can really go back and look and see if those were all right on the mark. And so that's kind of the whole point of this next round of revision. The emission standards, based on the data, MD will determine if the emission standards need to be modified. And again, as I said before, all buildings have a final standard of 0 net direct emissions. So it really is a question of those interim standards. And then energy use intensity, we intend to adopt an EUI standard or similar in 2027. Originally, when we first put the proposal out, it included a straight line approach to that EUI standard from basically the baseline year in calendar year 25 data, and then a straight line approach because that was the approach also used in Montgomery County. But part of this whole process, the adoption process of that standard, and really one of the major goals as this working group as part of that process is to talk about the right methodologies there and other approaches. So that's one of the key things. And that, this adoption process we're working on really is this working group and any public comment as part of our formal regulatory process later on. So House Bill 49, I'm guessing most of you have heard about this, but I just want to make sure we've gone over it. Due to new legislation, the BEPS program has new changes that technically went into effect October 1st, although really they're all affecting the calendar year 25 benchmarking starting in 26. So although these are now technically effective, they're really applying forward to the calendar year 25 and forward benchmarking, which happens next year. So basically, some of these are going to also be phased in. Some apply now and some really phase in to the later part of the actual performance standards. So at a high level, buildings in Montgomery County, which has its own BEPS program, are not part of the broader, the statewide standard anymore. And so that's one big change. And then covered buildings that have sensitive compartmented information facilities or SCIFs have two different kind of exemptions. One is from meeting the EUI target. And then if certain additional conditions are met, it's from both meeting the EUI targets, future EUI targets, and reporting. And so that will be an exemption process that will be standing up. And then we have specific energy exclusions. Oh yeah, and sorry, the SCIFs, they need to be operated by a defense agency, intelligence agency, the U.S. General Service Administration, the state, or a contractor to such agency. And yeah, I saw Sam put the exact language of HB 49 in the chat. So if you really want to go dig in and read all the nitty-gritty details, it's there. We're working to stand up a bunch of the forms to help implement all of this. And another one, so hospitals will be eligible to apply for total exemption. Again, in the 26 benchmarking due, 25 benchmarking due in 26. So that'll be stood up in the future here. There are certain energy exclusions. So steam sterilization equipment can be excluded and backup generators can be excluded. So those are the kind of key things, specifically the backup generators in healthcare facilities, labs, assisted living and nursing facilities, military buildings, buildings used in the life sciences. So I think that was all steam sterilization, and backup generators also includes critical infrastructure, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, backup generators is excludable from critical infrastructure. So a couple of different things. Again, we have some forms coming to do that. Credit will also be available for on-site renewable generation against future EUI standards. and credit of the on-site use of biomethane against net direct emission standards will also be part of that. I'm guessing many of the folks here are also at least aware we're running an alternative fuels and technologies working group, which is really focused on setting up the system to figure out how to do all the life cycle emissions crediting to implement that biomethane or other biofuels as part of a credit in the BEPS world. So that's a separate stream that is very much ongoing. We've had 5 or 6 meetings of that group, and those are all up on YouTube as well if you want to see them or sign up for them to continue. And then finally, the legislature required us to charge $100 per covered building on an annual reporting fee. So we do intend to stand that up and have that in place for that June 1, 26 benchmarking. And a lot of that is to help provide additional support to building owners through software and systems and kind of just an overall support infrastructure for buildings that need to benchmark and then comply going forward. That was a whole lot. Hopefully that's not the first time you heard about it, but if it is, feel free to ask questions about it later. But so that was the kind of set in law programmatic changes happening pretty quickly here. But then HB 49 also sets MDE out to go do a study and review a few things and specifically asks us a bunch of policy questions. And this is really the crux of the focus for this work group, at least from the MDE perspective. The legislature asked us to go look at these 4 major questions, and we want to start diving into it as part of this group. So one of those questions is how to calculate an alternative compliance payment for EUI standards. Another one is how to identify financial incentives to be included as part of a simple payback period calculation for buildings. Another then is how to address covered buildings that, despite all available incentives, hence the question about incentives, including the avoidance of penalties and fees, would not achieve compliance with the standards. And then finally, how to consider county-owned buildings, community colleges, emergency facilities, manufacturing buildings, and residential buildings, including considerations on tenants and condominium unit owners in meeting the standards. So those are some of the big policy questions that were asked of us and some of the things we want to make sure we dive into in the future of this working group. And so with that, I've given you my 10-minute spiel on all the things that we're trying to get done and some of the background here. And we're going to move. We have just a couple of quick questions as we try to schedule this working group going forward. We're hoping to really get into a consistent cycle. I'm going to just go to the next slide, and we're hoping to get into a consistent cycle of 2-hour sessions on a bi-monthly basis to try to really start digging in. And then the idea is we're going every other month so that there's time in between to start thinking, pulling together resources, getting data back to us, really trying to work on this and set us up on a long-term schedule to answer these questions and get some traction here. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sam because we're going to do a poll and then we'll get into the kind of broader discussion from there.
Thank you, Zach. All right, so we're moving into polls. As Zach said, trying to gauge here trying to get a consistent basis for this working group going forward. So we got 2 poll questions for you on figuring out what times generally work best for you. So this first question, I'm going to launch the poll. In a typical month, which of the days below is preferred to have a 2-hour meeting in the afternoon, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m.? Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
It's really useful unmuting myself. I'm paging around the DC BEPS task force meeting schedules. I know they're normally on Tuesdays, but I don't remember if they are. It looks like they're all over the place. Okay.
That's a good flag. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think Montgomery County's Building Performance Improvement Board moved to Fridays last I saw. But that's the other similar, I would call them close enough to analogs. Anyway, what I was going to ask is to leave the poll open long enough for me to figure that out.
Yeah, I can leave this open for
Yeah, give me a sec.
a couple minutes here, and if folks aren't sure where to get to the poll, I don't know if a pop-up came on your screen, but bottom right-hand corner, meeting tools, you should be able to see the 9 dots in a square that says meeting tools. You can click there to access the poll. But it's now live, so second week of the month, Tuesday, Thursday, or third week of the month, Tuesday, Thursday. Which one works better for you? And we'll give it a minute.
And I'll just chime in as well here. We're trying to set this up as just so there's a consistent schedule for everybody to plan around. And the 2-hour chunk is just so that we can get into some of the deeper discussions. Our hope is that maybe we can keep them a little bit shorter as we go in, but we want to try to hold the time so that we have the opportunity to have the discussions and go from there. And if anybody is not sure and thinks and needs to think about it a little bit more than today, we can kind of take the poll today and then feel free to email the BEPS email, and we need to have you put in Stakeholder Advisory Working Group in the subject so that we can separate you out from all the other BEPS emails we're receiving right now around compliance with the reporting deadline. So that's also an option as well. Actually, maybe Sam, we can amend the survey and put in a question, our feedback form, and put in a question there for the session scheduling. Correction to what I said before. We will do that. That'll streamline it. Because right now, yeah, we have a handful of votes, but not a lot. Looking like Thursday is the winner so far, but I think we want to get some more feedback before we actually settle on it.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I'm more than happy to participate as long as I don't have a conflicting DC meeting. The DC BEPS task force is normally on some Tuesdays. I can ask Katie Bergfeld if they can try to pick like a consistent Tuesday for a little bit, which might free up one of them. The Thursday problem is also DC. There is the commercial building technical advisory group, which might be stood up at some point randomly. I'll email the MDE folks if that turns into a thing. Sorry, my schedule sucks. The good news is it's normally not consecutive weeks.
Those are good to know about. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'll ping a couple Montgomery County folks in case there's like a conflict there. I don't know if there's anybody who knows stuff about like Baltimore may have an equivalent of like people who might also care about this, but couldn't make this meeting for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other, like, I don't know the answer to that one, but that's the other people I could think of to ask.
Yeah, that's a good tip. We'll ask around a little bit more and put that in the feedback form and try and get some more folks to look at that before deciding on something. All right, well, I'll go ahead and end this poll for the time being. Which brings us to our next poll, which I'll go ahead and launch. A little faster, this one. This one is, would you prefer to have the 2-hour session from in the afternoon, 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, or 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock? So go ahead and take another minute and provide your thoughts for that as well, if you don't mind. All right, well, we're at the same amount of votes that we got for the first poll, so I'll just go ahead and end this one early. Thank you all for participating in this interactive poll session of this working group. Like, end that poll. And with that, we can move into our feedback portion of this working group session today. So, as we discussed, Zach shared those major topics that we're considering and would like to bring to this working group, in the future. And so if you have any additional thoughts at this time that you'd like us to consider, feel free to come off mute and share those thoughts. We'd love to hear them. I think we've got plenty of time here, so if you have a lot to say, feel free to grab the mic and run with it. If you don't want to come off mute, we're going to drop this Google form in the chat so you can stew on it for the next couple days and submit your thoughts at a later time if you'd like. But I'm going to open up the floor now to anyone who wants to share their thoughts.
And I'm going to bring us back to the major topics, at least from our perspective, in case anyone wants to jump in on the other topics you'd like to see. But also don't feel limited to that. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, so Chris Pendley, AOBA, although I think I know a fair chunk of people on here. So I will say members have had interest in going through the interim and kind of reevaluating them. I think actually, I know I thought about, but I don't know if we actually formally submitted comments on maybe different ways to run the interim net direct emission standards as a whole. The challenge with with direct gas reduction is once you get past efficiency projects, you're stuck at electrifying end uses. So it gets real chunky real fast. I love saying things like chunky after lunch. Sorry. Basically, aside from electrifying process loads, you've got a big gap group of domestic hot water and a big group of heating hot water in a lot of these buildings. So you don't, practically speaking, it's tough to do net direct emissions reduction straight line. It seems like there's something there regarding efficiency versus one load versus two loads at first pass. The other thing to kind of that factors in here, Montgomery County's BEPS approach kind of issues some of the straight line methodology pieces. It keeps the straight line methodology, but BEPS kind of work for what if you can't do straight line. I'm going to stop talking for a second, see if other people want to talk.
Thanks, Chris. And yeah, definitely welcome other people hopping in. I should just say, for the recording here too, and if anyone doesn't know, so interim net direct, we are required by law to have a 20% interim net direct standard in 2030. So that's kind of, there are some constraints on, there's the 20% to start and the 0 to end, but as you identified, there's kind of that, what does it look like in between those? And I think Chris, in comments you have submitted in the past, how is even that 20% calculated? So I think those are.
Yeah, I think that was kind of where I was going with that. Is there might be once you have all of the data, right? There might be a way to identify. I think it's 20% per building type, right? So in practice, it might end up setting up a slightly different number for each building to get to that statutory requirement. I'd have to go back and look. I'm happy to do so because I remember staring at this for a minute. I remember what I wrote down.
Yeah, and for anyone here too, that's also welcome feedback. If you want us to, and we can definitely go back through and represent some old topics about how the current net direct emission standards were arrived at. I know if you're really in the weeds, it's all in the technical support documentation for the regulations, which are available on our website. But that is a deep dive. So we can definitely, if that's a desire, we can definitely make that available in a future webinar. But yeah, Chris, it was set by property type. They looked at all the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab did the analysis, and they looked at that benchmarking data I mentioned before and said, what's a 20% reduction by property type?
All right, if nobody else is talking, I'll keep going. The other thing, the HB 49 credit for on-site renewables, I think kind of locks you in on the EUI side to something like a net normalized site EUI. Julie, I know you're also on the BPIB. I am going to drag you out to actually make somebody else talk in this meeting. But that's kind of the other thing when you were going through HB 49 and your major topics. That was kind of like the other snap reaction is I think that's probably where you'll end up with that.
Chris, could you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, sorry. So the way Montgomery County approaches their, so Montgomery County's building energy performance standards use a site EUI target. What they do is they do something instead that's called a net normalized site EUI, which is on-site energy minus some things you can exclude, which I think are basically the same between county and state. I think state adds food services, which isn't super relevant here. But what the county also does is the county allows for on-site renewables to be excluded as part of your EUI, or sorry, counts as a credit basically. So if your site EUI is 53, but you're also generating 2 kPtu per year of on-site renewables, like an on-site solar, then your net normalized site EUI is 53 minus 2 or 51 kBtu per square foot per year. My snap read of kind of how HB 49 settled out with needing to account for on-site solar, plus looking at energy use intensity interim and final standards means you're probably settling on something like that as a metric. Yeah, that was where I was going with that.
Yes, I think that's fair. I think there's, we can definitely have the discussion there. As we put out the regulation last year before HB 49, we kind of left it a little bit more broad of some sort of energy efficiency standard. But yes, given an EUI credit and HB 49, I think that is the direction we are directed by the legislature to move.
Yeah, the way that, and I have to go back and look at Montgomery County's BEPS technical report, but I don't think their model assumed the adoption of solar. I think the case studies did, but not the model itself.
What was that last part, Chris? Say that again.
So the case studies in Montgomery County's BEPS technical report, a fair amount of them had solar as part of their compliance strategy. But I don't think the underlying data model that Montgomery County used to set their building energy performance standards assumed the adoption of solar.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like solar wasn't assumed to be part of a compliance strategy on the data side, even if it was in practice on the implementation side.
Yeah, heard. Yep.
Yeah, and maybe just to round that out, the original modeling for Maryland BEPS did not include solar as a compliance strategy. But that's, yeah, obviously a question as we look at this again, now that is a specific inclusion per HB 49.
Yeah, I mean, I would suspect that kind of the formal AOPA position on this is like, hey, Montgomery County has this mechanic, like, adopt that mechanic without having run it through all of the AOPA channels. But I suspect that's fairly close to where kind of our thoughts would come down. The nice part is also that that model's already been developed. Sorry, one more. I'm going to go to the policy question piece. Sorry, on how to identify financial incentives to be included as part of a simple payback period calculation. It might be useful at some point to get Louis Morgante, again, also from DEP, Montgomery County's Department of Environmental Protection, to talk about how this factored into their building performance improvement plan kind of compliant audit scope. I think Louis would be the person to talk about that. Because I think there's existing, like, we literally had a BPIB meeting on this. Julie, were you at that one? Or was that one the one you missed? I forget.
Yeah, I was there.
Okay, cool. Where we kind of dove into the like what can you account for versus what was like difficult, what was kind of difficult to account for. And I think that would be useful background for folks.
Yeah, I think we can definitely work to line that up. That's, also part of this, the whole goal with this working group is, if there's, we don't need to reinvent the wheel on most of this stuff. There are existing models, there is existing approaches done either in Montgomery County, in DC, or one of the 20 other jurisdictions that have a BPS, building performance standard policy of some sort. So there are different options here that we can definitely look to existing programs, even if they're pretty broadly worded questions. I just mainly took the questions right out of HB 49 and with some light editorializing to make it not read like a very complicated law, with strikeouts and stuff like that. Just move those right into here. So definitely good suggestion. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. While we're here, I have a way more annoying suggestion. I am so sorry. So like HB 49, right? Or just state BEPS goes to 0 for net direct emissions, which means that you have to look at electrification at some point. Getting costs for service upgrades sucks, it takes forever, and is building specific. I'm using technical terms here, sorry. So the third point about how to address covered buildings that, despite all available incentives, include the avoidance and penalties and fees, would not achieve compliance. That there's going to be a class of buildings that a data model might say can make it because the data model doesn't necessarily know the service upgrade cost. And I don't know where this I don't know if this is something that we cover necessarily in the work group. But this seems relevant. Like if there's a data model that says, oh, it's going to cost $30 to add service to a building. In practice, most of the models I've seen just kind of go, hey, it costs $10 plus something else. We don't know what that something else is to add service, but we know you have to add this new thing that's electrically served, and you don't have power in the building. That seems to come into item 3, but I don't quite know yet how to address that. So I just wanted to flag that as an item that we should at least discuss down the road. That was a word salady, but I think you knew where I was going with that.
Yeah, so just to maybe recap that, basically under this third bullet, considering the cost, that service upgrade unknown, wild card basically as part of the question and potential pathway there.
Yeah, and there's a fair question about how do you demonstrate that, right? Which I think DC is just starting to wrangle with as of last month. But that seems like it's an implementation problem at minimum. And I think it's probably worth addressing at some point across the study, even if it's just to identify here's the things that we need to figure out as part of this.
And I think if I remember you saying correctly, Chris, it was also the delay. So
there's
not a way to, if there's a way to quantify delay, or if it's something maybe that this group, with increased awareness might be able to help with, if there's going to be more requests, that might be something that could be productive.
Yeah, I think if there is, and I think there's another work group that might be looking at some of the utility side stuff, Zach. This may eventually land over there somewhere, ish.
Yeah, I mean, I would focus if there's thoughts on there. I think this is the place to bring it in. A lot of the utility work group is mainly us coordinating with all the utilities to make sure they know what they need to do, and bringing issues back that stakeholders are identifying. But so I think we can put that on the agenda for this group as well.
Okay. Yeah. The time delay piece, and I saw Becky at a Building Innovation Hub meeting yesterday, so sorry for Becky hearing this again, but basically you have to internally sell an electrification project twice once when you know the once when you know you need a load study, and then once when you know the actual cost of the project is. Which is not related to the questions on the slide, but solving that problem would probably be of rather keen interest to most of the people on the call. So I don't know if this, yeah, that's what I'm like. I don't know if this is this work group, right? Like it's not this specific lift, but it goes somewhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I will say the HB, big picture here, HB 49 is our focus for the next year because we have a legislatively mandated response, but we don't we imagine this working group sticking around and being the place to start to work through, all of the sticky implementation, high level questions that do come up as we go through this. So I think it's totally fair to put it on. And if we want to try to make it part of some of these conversations, I think that's fair as well.
It factors in, I think, when you talk about alternative compliance pathways. Like there's a schedule piece of that. The specifics of which we don't need to worry about right now, but I think it's like factors in there somewhere. Can I ask a totally off the wall question?
Let's give 1 minute to see if anyone else wants to chime in. Otherwise, yes, Chris.
And I guess along those lines, I know a couple people joined kind of after discussion started. So thanks for joining. And this portion is open discussion. Feel free to come off mute on additional topics that you would like this working group to, consider throughout its, implementation in the long run. And so Zach, pitched these topics on the screen earlier in the presentation. So, in addition to these, are there others that you've been thinking about or that you would like MD to consider as part of this working group? We dropped a feedback form in the chat that is pinned. So if you'd rather write your thoughts, feel free to do so there, and we'll capture them. But as Zach said, we'll give it a minute to see if anyone else would like to share anything. All right. Well, I think Chris, you can take the stage again if you'd like.
Yay! So I think of all of the various working groups MD has up, this one, casting a wider feedback net earlier on is probably like one of the most critical items. As part of my role with AOBA, I did, reach out to a few members to have a couple to, make sure that we can have other people on the call if I can't make it for whatever reason. But so AOBA's service territory, not service territory. AOBA's territory is basically Prince George's County is the overlap, which is to say that we don't really, I can speak kind of about what stuff might be in the rest of the state, but like I don't really know a ton about like BGE specifics. I'm not really great at that. Does MDE have the ability to like get the word out more to like other areas of the state? Sorry, I told you it was an off the wall question.
Yeah, I mean, we've put this out a few times, offering, to sign up for the working group through our main email blast. And that really is our main channel of communication, but we can definitely take a look back and see. I think we had, I forget the exact number, but it was a decent number of folks signed up for this working group email list. But we can take another pass at it for sure.
Yeah, I can plug it also. We have our Montgomery County Green committee meeting tomorrow morning, and I know there's a couple people who operate outside Montgomery County in that meeting. I can plug it for them. I can plug it for them as well over there. Because I really don't want to be the only one talking other than y'all for 2 hours, because nobody needs to hear my voice that much.
All right, well, we will continue to cast a wide net and see who else wants to join, and hopefully try to arrive at a standard meeting time. That our hope is that by setting a standard meeting time, it makes it easier for folks to join and has a pretty predictable pattern for when this will be held. So you know in advance when we will be meeting, and if you can't make it, you can try to find someone in your stead. But yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
I would just add that if you had a lot more people sign up and they're not here, it might be because I found it difficult to add it to my calendar easily, so I had to create my own event just to set up a reminder. I don't use Gmail at work, so I think it was forcing me. If I recall correctly, it may have been a different event, but I think your reminder or the email was asking me to create an email, or I would have to sign into Gmail in order to add it to my calendar. So if this was the event that where that was the situation, other people may have fallen into the same trick or the same category, and it's not on their calendar. So that's it.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. That's definitely something we want to hear. Has anyone else had that kind of issue with our? Yeah, Chris, go for it.
Oh, I was saying I've had the issue.
Okay, gotcha.
I think at one point I couldn't actually join these meetings from Chrome, and I had to use Microsoft Edge instead. And that was how I ended up getting around it. But like, there's another work group I'm on where I have to do that also. It's something I figured out how to deal with with Google Meetings, because like Mike, I don't use my Gmail accounts for work stuff. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we have to use Google Meets because that's the state system, but we can definitely look into figuring out if there's a better way to get people invites. We can put our heads together and see what more we can do. Right now, I know we had a lot of people had issues with the invites, so we went to just sending out a meeting link. But you do, as you noted, you do have to then put it in your calendar. So it sounds like in trying to solve it for some folks, we might have made it more difficult for others. So we can think about how to make that better. We've usually had pretty good attendance at most of our events, so I don't know if it was just bad timing today as well. But it's a good feedback, and we appreciate it, Mike.
Any other thoughts for this discussion portion today? All right. Well, just a reminder that feedback form is in the chat. If you would like to submit your thoughts, something pops into your head after we end here today, you can submit it to us that way as well. And we'll be posting this session to YouTube, within the next week or so. And so if you have people inquire about the meeting, they also had issues with the calendar invite, things like that, they'll be able to catch up on things via the posting on YouTube. So please pass that along if people inquire about it, but look for that in the coming week. And with that, I think we can go and close out today's session. We really appreciate everyone joining the first session of the Stakeholder Advisory Working Group. We're very excited to kick off this working group and look forward to all of the great discussion over the coming years of BEPS implementation. So thank you all, and we will, be in touch about scheduling future sessions, but talk to you soon and hope you all have a great day. Thanks again.